today. Today,
Wait, no, wait.
oh.
Just thought I want to hear every word.
Today we're going to do a little bit of Jewish anatomy and physiology. We're going to talk about this idea of jumping to Kesser and what's expected of us. And we're going to continue on with the third midah, the third of the attributes of mercy, the higher attributes of mercy that the Ramah quotes from the prophet Micha. Let's see, not that. Here we go. It's very interesting that, I'll give you a little bit of historical background from my perspective. I think I've told you before that my late wife, Chana, Allah Shalom, she was nifter. It'll be 10 years ago, this coming Yud Gimel Tishrei. 2013. And she started having seizures in 1990. And so for 25 years, she suffered like bombs, one seizure after the other. And over the course of the next 10 years, we went together to over 200 doctors, Western, Eastern, conventional, alternative, traveled to Switzerland, to Israel, and we found that the majority of doctors were concerned with two things. Number one, with stopping the seizures, which was prudent, however they could stop them. And number two, putting a name as to why she was having the seizures, epileptic seizures. And no one considered, virtually no one considered, if there was a connection to spirituality, hers or mine, as her husband, if there was a connection to the body and the soul at all, and what was the etiology of it, the pathogenesis, the origin, where did it come from? Nobody was concerned with that. And isn't that really a reflection on our times? Let's just treat the symptoms. Let's stop that which is preventing us from keeping on keeping on. We mustn't feel. We mustn't know why things are the way they are. That's too inconvenient. But the truth is that all illness is Hashem speaking to us directly, tapping us on the shoulder, saying to us, Yidala, I'm talking to you, please listen. And so, over the next 10 or so years, as I was on this journey to find out what I could do to make her well, I came to the realization that I need to be that shliach. I need to be that messenger. I need to find out what the source is. There is no medicine unless it involves God, and there is no medicine unless we try to understand what the message is that Hashem is telling us. And the truth is, that's what the third midah of the midas is all about. Let's learn the beginning of it, and then here's a copy I have for everyone. So the first two midas to review. The first one is telling us that Hashem holds back. He is called the humiliated king because he just waits. He waits for someone who sins, who's used the very strength that's been given to this person to serve him, and instead he's used it to he's used it to rebel against Hashem. How ridiculous and how forbearing of Hashem to tolerate that. And the second is even higher, because not only does Hashem tolerate what we do, but whenever we do a sin, and we talked about two types of sins last time that the Arizal brings down. One sin where a person does something because they really want to rebel against Hashem, and the second type of sin where one really wants something, but it's only because their passions, their hedonistic drives. That's the difference between a pesha and an avoin. Pesha one does because of a real hatred and rebelliousness against Hashem, and an avoin is out of passion. So when one does an avera of either kind, the Gemara, actually the Mishnah in Pirkei Avos tells us that every time one does a mitzvah, one creates a defense attorney, and when one does an avera, they create a demon. And this demon, you would think, would go before Hashem and would say, I get my life from you, so therefore keep me alive. And Hashem should say to him, no, go to the guy who created you by doing this avera, get your life force from him. And then this demon would come and suck all the life force out of the person. The person would die and he would become vaporized. That's what the Devorah suggests. But he says, no, Hashem waits. Hashem says, I don't want you, sweet person, to suffer. This demon is going to be around and he'll sap some of your strength, and you'll have, to some degree, a bit of a living Gehenna here in this world because of all that you've done to create a schism between yourself and me. But I'll wait. And I want you to come back to me. And when you come back to me, I'll welcome you with open arms, and then this demon can be transformed or even can be vaporized. Those are the first two. Let's see what says Mida Shlishi. He starts off by saying, Zu Mida Gedoyla, Sharei Ein Mechila Al Yedei Shliach. It's a very, very great Mida. It's interesting that the Mefarshim point out that the term Gedoyla alludes to Hashem's humility, Hashem's anivus, Hashem's modesty. We say every Motzei Shabbos in Vayiten Lecha, Chol makam shata motzei in v'sanisha shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu, sham ata motzei gedulasai. Whenever you find, the other way around, wherever you find Hashem's greatness, there you find His humility. And so now, which of the spheres is most joined, most connected, most associated with anivus, with humility? Keser. And that's what we're talking about this whole beginning, this whole first part of the Torah Devorah. How to connect ourselves with humility. How can we make changes in ourselves learning from Hashem? So listen to what he says. Ein mechila al yedei shliach. If I do something against Hashem, I can't go to my neighbor here and I can say, do me a favor, ask Hashem to forgive me. It doesn't work. Ela yidmamash shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu k'dichsiv ki imcha aslicha. But Hashem Himself forgives us. Hashem personally will forgive us. But not only that, Umay aslicha, what is the forgiveness that He does? Hu roichetz ha'avoin. Hashem is going to wash us clean of the avera we did. Remember we said that an avoin is an avera where we do something out of passion, not because we want to rebel against Hashem. In rachatz Hashem is tzoas b'nois tzion, that if Hashem will wash the excrement of the daughters of Zion, very vivid lashon. V'chein k'siv v'zarokti aleim mayim tahora, and I will pour upon you pure waters. Taina oiver al pesha. And that's what this third midah is all about. That he will rise above pesha. Even if a person has done a pesha is a sin where a person is willfully, angrily rebelling against Hashem will clean up the mess. Because the truth is, there are two things that an Avera does. An Avera will make us dirty, physically and spiritually dirty, and an Avera will make us impure. That's why the Talmud Devorah is bringing two verses here. He's talking about the physical process that what a sin does to a person. But there's another part also. It affects us spiritually, so we're not the same person. I'll tell you an interesting story that happened yesterday. It so happens that if I've taken someone, as a physician, if I've taken someone's pulse before, I'm able to diagnose and treat them, even if they're not with me distally, on my pulse, by setting my mind and my heart to the person's name, saying a special tefillah, and then focusing in on the patient. And this is...
Does your pulse physically change when you do
Yes,
that?
absolutely.
So your pulse takes on their pulse, as it were? It mimics their pulse?
It's all, not their pulse, we're all part of the same person. We're all one. So it's just a different aspect. Even more so, if I have a patient, it was last night, I had a patient in America who had corona. And I checked their pulses. And I said, oh, wait a second, before I check you, I want to make sure you haven't yet taken your medicine. Because she was supposed to take the medicine every, I think it was 3.5 hours. So I wanted to make sure before I checked her that it wasn't, that she hadn't already taken it. Because if she'd already taken it, she wouldn't need the medicine. Because the pulse changes then. So it so happened that she had just taken it, so I couldn't test her then. But the fact is that the pulse does change based on what we take and what we do. So there was this young man from Los Angeles who happened to be here in summer camp in Svas. And he was very, very, very sick. And his father contacted me, and he asked me if I'd be able to go and see him. So I said, well, you know what? I've taken his pulse before. I'll take his pulse now. It so happened, he also had corona. He also had stomach flu. He also had dysentery. Poor 17-year-old kid. So I figured out which medicines he needed. I wrote to his father, and his father wrote to the camp director, and the camp director sent 2 boys to pick up the medicines, and I gave specific instructions as to what he's supposed to take and when, and to call me in 24 hours because the medicines are going to change. You don't keep taking them indefinitely because you're changing. It's unlike Western medicine where you're taking an antibiotic for 10 days, even if you're all better, because that's the rule, because we're all the same, right? No. Anyway, so I tested him, his pulse has changed, Baruch Hashem. What I wanted to tell you, though, what was very interesting is the 2 boys who came to pick up the medicines, and I've talked about this a lot. It was like the lights were out. Their eyes were dull. There was no simchas chaim, there was no joy to them. It's interesting, as we segue into what I'm going to talk about in a minute, Jewish medicine, Jewish anatomy and physiology, there's a Gemara in Avodah Zorah. It's Daf Chaf Ches, 28 in Tractate Avodah Zorah, that says that the eyes are connected to the heart. And so therefore, if someone has eye pain on a fast day, in Yana D'Yoma, 2 days from now, tomorrow night is Tisha B'Av. If one has eye pain, the halacha is one should not fast. Why? Because it'll affect the heart. And it could be life-threatening. So says the Gemara. So there's an incredible connection between the body and the soul. And one of the things that, going back to what I was saying before, is that when I was looking for the correct approach to treat my late wife, my sweet Chana, I needed to find an approach which would integrate the body, the mind, the emotions, and the soul. And any system of medicine which compartmentalizes and doesn't say that psychiatric disorders, psychological disorders, spiritual disorders, and bodily orders aren't completely interconnected, doesn't know what they're talking about, in my humble opinion, and from my experience of doing this for more than 20 years. So we talk about how a sin affects us. And that's what we're going to continue in a minute. In the time of Devorah, the fact that a sin makes us filthy, physically filthy, and a sin also makes us impure. And so therefore, when we heal ourselves from when we sin, and as a matter of fact, we're going to see that Hashem really does it for us. He's our maid. Really. That we're going to not only affect kapora. Kapora is, how do you translate kapora? Atonement. What is a kofer? It's a bribe. We bribe Hashem. We bring the Sarah Mishtalech, the scapegoat, in place of ourselves. We're going to learn about that in a later one of the Yud Gimel Midas. But essentially, we clean ourselves off from the dirt. And so a sin has made us dirty, and we have to do things, whatever it takes to clean ourselves off. But a sin also makes us impure. It makes us tameh. And so Hashem, we need to have as our mikvah, as the one who cleanses us and cleans us and makes us so that we can wake up. And so our eyes are bright. It's interesting, when I learned, one of the medicines I learned was Chinese medicine. I was very attracted to Chinese medicine. I was very attracted to craniosacral therapy. I was very attracted to the Rambam's medicine and many of the Sfarim of the Chazal that speak about this connection between body and soul, that you can't heal the body without healing the soul, and vice versa. You know, it's interesting. They say that if somebody has a serious psychiatric illness, most of the time, they know exactly what's wrong with themselves. They just don't know how to get out of this pit that they're in. Well, the Torah teaches us how to get out of the pit. And that's this connection between body and soul. It's totally, totally integrated. And to numb yourself by taking meds which are not going to heal yourself is, again, sinking yourself deeper in. So looking at the eyes, the Chinese describe something very interesting. If a person's eyes have a blank stare to them, if there's no brightness, there's no light, if there's no sparkle to the eyes, there's no twinkle, we say that the shen is like the neshama. Chinese term for shen is the same term as neshama, is empty and lacking. And we need to strengthen that. We need to build the heart up through the eyes. So now let's take a detour for a moment, and let's go to the Gemara in Brachos. So take one, pass it around, and we're going to learn an amazing Gemara. The Gemara speaks about emotions, physiology, and how they affect us. It's two-sided. Let's learn inside. It's a Gemara in Daf Samech Aleph, Amid Aleph at the bottom, and going on to Amid Base. Says the Gemara, Tana Rabbanim. It's all translated into English. Shtei klayos yesh lo adam. Hashem gave us two kidneys. Achas yoatzesoi l'toiva, one advises us to do good. Achas yoatzesoi l'ro, and one advises us to do evil. Umistabra the toiva liyaminu ra l'smoila, and it's logical, makes sense that the right kidney is what advises us to do good, and the left kidney is what advises us to do evil. As the pasuk says in Koheles, the heart of the wise man leans to the right, and the heart of the fool leans to the left. And the Gemara continues. Tana Rabbanim, another brisa. Klayos yoyatzes. Anybody who says Tikkun Klali knows this verse very well. That the kidneys advise. What do they advise? Let's go on. Halev Mavin, they advise the heart which understands. So what does that mean? So there's two verses. One in Kapitel Tes Zayin, that I will bless Hashem on that He will advise me even at night in the time of darkness. So Hashem is speaking to us through our kidneys, David Melech says. And therefore, that advice goes to the heart. And look what it says next. Halev Mavin. So that is based on a pasuk in Yeshaya that says that his heart, and then it's in the plural, Levav Yavinu. That there are two parts of one's heart. There's the Yetzer Tov and the Yetzer Hara. They're both part of the heart. What do we say in Shema every day? V'ahavta es Hashem Elokecha b'chol levavecha. There's two hearts. Love Hashem with both parts of your heart. It's interesting. You look at Eretz Yisrael, and it's shaped like a human body. The top part is like the head. The middle part is like the torso. The bottom part is like the lower extremities. And Hashem is very closely integrated and involved and intertwined with us when we're in Eretz Yisrael. And if a person desires to be in Eretz Yisrael, as the Baal Shem Tov Kodesh used to say, wherever your heart longs to be, that's where you are. Even if you're in Chutz La'aretz, if you long to be in Eretz Yisrael, you can be here also. And we have a remez to that. There is a verse that talks about how Hashem is the quintessential tzaddik. In Kel Mistater, we say Hashem is a tzaddik. And what verse tells us about how Hashem is a tzaddik? The verse tzaddik yesod olam. What are the three letters that make up that verse? Tzaddik is the foundation of the world. We learned last week about brachas, how in a bracha, the word olam comes from the root and the source meaning hidden. That this world really is a world of imagination. What we see is not really what's really going on. So olam is the most physical, hedonistic, non-real part of the world. And you have an amazing hint to Eretz Yisrael in that verse. Tzaddik, what's the first letter of tzaddik? Tzaddik. And what city begins with the letter tzaddik? Tzfat. So the tzaddik, the head, where the brain is, where the neshama is in Tzfas. Yisoid. What is the center of Eretz Yisrael? What is the foundation of Eretz Yisrael? Yisoid. What word begins, what city begins with the letter Yud? Yerushalayim. So the heart and the Yisoid is Yerushalayim. Tzaddik Yisod Olam. What is the most physical, material, what was called the garden spot of Hashem? before it was destroyed and overturned. It begins with an ayin, not a samech. So I'm trying to throw you a left curve. So it was Sodom. And what overlooks Sodom? The city of Arad. Arad is ayin. And that's the most gashmistic, that's the nefesh bahamis of Eretz Yisrael. So we have these three aspects. Eretz Yisrael encompasses all parts of the human being. And so the heart understands, and halt refers to both parts of the heart, the Yetzer Tov and the Meit and the Yetzer Hora, which are guided by the kidneys, as we said. Let's go on. So the Gemara continues. Halashon mechasech, that the tongue cuts and shapes sounds within the oral cavity. Hapeh goimer, the mouth and the lips complete the process by bringing forth speech. Sounds are transformed into speech. So essentially, by the way, I'm not just interpreting this, I'm basing this on Rashi's explanation of these things, so I'm not freelancing. Rea sho'eves, kol minei mashkin. That the lung, I think I skipped something. Oh, I did skip something.
Yeah.
Haveshes machnis moitzi kol minei machel. So the veshes, which is the esophagus, it brings in and brings out all kinds of different foods. So on that, Rashi explains that it's disseminating all kinds of food. For even though food goes from the throat to the esophagus to the stomach, the lungs, says Rashi, suck fluid and draw them first through the abdominal walls. This is exactly what they say in Chinese medicine also, by the way, that food is broken down also through the lungs. Hakana moitzikol, and the trachea brings forth a sound. Rea sha'eves kol minei mashkin, as we said a minute before. Here he says explicitly, the lung draws out all different fluids. Hakave koyes, the liver brings forth anger. V'amara zorekes by tipa menichosai, and the gallbladder what's the word I use? Secretes a tiny drop of gall, and it calms the liver down. Tchol soichek, the spleen causes one to laugh. Korkivan, which is the ma in animals, but it really is referring to the process of peristalsis in human beings. And the peristalsis takes place in the small and large intestines. It grinds. Hakeva yeshena, the stomach, meaning the digestive tract, brings on sleep. Ha'af ne'ar, and the nostrils wake a person up. Ne'ar yashan v'yashan ne'ar. Nimuk v'holichle. However, there's an important lesson he's saying here also, implicitly. What does that mean? It means that if a person eats a lot at nighttime, then the blood is going to go not where it belongs. The stomach needs to have tranquility, quiet, in order to digest food, in order to heal, to break the food down. And if one is eaten after 7 p.m., essentially, after it gets dark, one interferes with the digestive process, one doesn't break down food, and one doesn't sleep well. This is what the Gemara is telling us, and this is also what the Chinese tell us, the same thing. The lungs, which are connected to the nostrils, the upper respiratory tract, they need to be clear. If our breathing is congested, specifically the Chinese talk about how breathing The lungs heal between the hours of 3 and 5 a.m. But if their roles are reversed, meaning the stomach is active, working on digestion when it needs to be calm, and the nostrils are congested in breathing, and sleep is artificially brought on through the likes of a CPAP machine, says the Gemara, his health will gradually deteriorate until he dies. And if both functions, if both functions take place at the same time, either the digestion or the free flow of oxygen to the lungs are taking place proactively at the same time, a person dies immediately. That's Jewish medicine, my friends. What the Gemara is saying is an important message into how we need to live our lives. Meaning, we need to make sure that everything is done in a mesuderdik way, in a very orderly way. We eat early, we go to bed early, we wake up early, our digestion works properly, our breathing is, the function of breathing is initiated so that we wake up refreshed, so we don't have to fall asleep because we're so exhausted. This is the essence of listening to Hashem through our bodies, the Gemara says. Before we finish learning this Gemara on anatomy and physiology, I want to share with you what the Gemara continues. Tanya Rabbi Yossi Aglili. So Rabbi Yossi Aglili teaches us. Tzadikim yetzer toiv shoftam shenemar livi chalo b'kirbi. That tzadikim, their yetzer hara judges and guides them. As it says, my heart is shallow within me. Why is his heart shallow? He's talking about the yetzer hara. It's a dead weight. So the tzaddik is working very hard to overcome his dead weight of his yetzer hara and to bring himself into life. Rashayim yetzer hara shoftim. But for Rashayim, their yetzer hara controls and guides them. Shenemar, Num pasha v'rasha v'kerav b'libi, ein pachalim neged einov. That the Rasha only desires that which is hateful to Hashem. And he has no fear of Hashem before his eyes. But then, look at how the Gemara concludes. Something that may make you smile. V'amar Rabba, but Rabba says, Kinon anu beinoinim. These beinoimin that he's talking about, who are neither tzaddikim or rashayim, that's like us. Who quotes that? Has anybody ever seen a book called the Tanya? This is how the Tanya begins, by quoting Rava and saying how a person should be, how a person can be as a Beinoini. So, look at this Gemara and consider the wisdom of how we are. In Chinese medicine, they teach that if a person thinks too much, it'll damage their digestive tract. If a person is multitasking when they're eating, it'll affect them. And what do the Chinese call the digestive function? They call it the spleen. When a person is goofy, they're giddy, they're multitasking when they're eating, it's going to affect them. It's going to affect how they function in digestion. If a person is angry, it damages their liver, just like the Gemara says, the Chinese teach. If a person gets shocked easily, it affects their gallbladder. And there's an intricate relationship between the gallbladder and the liver. The other organs I'll tell you also parenthetically, since I'm sure you're wondering. If a person tends to be frightened easily, it damages their kidneys. If a person tends to be depressed, it damages their lungs. So we see that in the system of healing, based on the ancient wisdoms, Lahavdil Elef Abdullas, the Chazal, and the Chinese, and many other systems, such as in craniosacral therapy, where we're taught about the relationship between treating the body and bringing the mind, how the body remembers emotional traumas. So too, we have to treat both. And when we treat both, we're able to heal the body and soul. So let's finish now our third midah in the Torah Devorah. We said that Hashem himself will heal us and purify us. And that's what the slicha is. Hashem is the one who does slicha. He's not going to use any angel. He's not going to use any tzaddik. Hashem is going to clean us up. Hu rochetz ha'avoin. He'll wash this deliberate sin that we've done. As the Arizal tells us, an avon is a deliberate sin that we do because we have passions. And Hashem will make it so he'll go to us, he'll speak to our inner self, and he'll tell us, Yidala, I know you want to have that cheeseburger, but it's going to make you dirty. I want you to want to be close to me. So Hashem will heal us of the passions that distance us from him. And that's what it refers to when it says, Imrachas Hashem Tzoas B'nais Tzion. When we eat something that's not good for us, when we engage in an action of passion, something that's not good for us, we make ourselves dirty. Comes along Hashem, our nursemaid as it were, and Hashem will clear off and clean up all of this schmutz that's made us so far away from him. But it goes on. On first glance, it seems like just an afterthought, another proof. But no, he's giving us a very specific additional lesson. V'chein ksiv. Also it says, V'zarakti alei mayim taharim. I will sprinkle upon you purifying waters. Dahainu oiver al pesha. Even though you are far away from me, even though you are rebelling against me, even though you don't have any light in your eyes, Hashem loves us and wants us, and Hashem will be our mikveh. Hashem will bring us close to him. All of our life is a dialogue and an interaction and a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful process of integrating between ourselves and Hashem. And so with this particular midah, this midah of oiver al pesha, no matter how far away you might feel from Hashem, Hashem will bring you close. Hashem will sprinkle waters upon you. Hashem will wash off the excrement which is on you from your passions. And so too concludes the Torah Devorah. Hine mamish that's the way we have to be also. It's my job to clean up what this guy messed up or made dirty, the sin this person did. I have to do it. Lo yomer kach. A person should say that. Because a person can sin in the most atrocious, disgusting, unfathomable sins. And Hashem himself will come along Lo yedei shaliach, without using a messenger. V'misaken es ma'avisoi, and he'll fix all that you made crooked. V'roichetz tzoas avoinai, and he'll wash off the excrement, the smelly excrement that your sin caused. Mikan, knowing this, yisbayesh ha'adam lashuv lachet, a person should be embarrassed, humiliated. He should wake himself up. He should sprinkle himself, as it were, with the waters of realization and say, what am I doing? How could I have done that? Am I not embarrassed? Because the King himself is cleaning me off and washing me. Before we conclude, I want to share with you a wonderful story from the Saba Kadisha of Radishitz. The Saba Kadisha of Radishitz was one of the great Hasidic Rebbes. And he would always make a Siyum Masechta. He would conclude a tractate on the Arizal's Yortzeit. He would make a Sudas Mitzvah on the Arizal's Yortzeit. Day before yesterday. And every year he would say the same story. In a faraway land, there was a man who was known affectionately, sardonically, as the Schluffer, the sleeper. He was always asleep. Came the month of El. People started to realize, Rosh Hashanah is a month away. We better start making some changes. We better wake ourselves up. And he'd sleep. Call the night of Rosh Hashanah. His wife said, wake up, it's Rosh Hashanah. And he slept. The next morning, she comes home to feed the babies. And he's sleeping. She comes home 2 more times. Finally, it's Kriyas HaTorah, right before Tiyah Shofar, and she screams at him, Chaim Yankel, wake up! They're going to blow Shofar now. What's with you? And he jumps up, throws on a torn shirt, wraps himself up with a blanket with feathers all over it, and breathlessly runs to shul right before they're going to blow shofar. And you can imagine the scene. It's the most serious time of the year. Shofar blowing, the first day of Rosh Hashanah. And in walks this comical character. The children started to snicker. People were looking at him like, where is he from, Mars? And he looked at himself and he realized where he was and what he'd done. And he started to cry. Such incredible tears of shame and embarrassment. And with that, the Saba Kadisha of Radishitz would start crying tears of knowing tears. What are we doing? Here we are. The Beis HaMikdash is being destroyed. And what do we do having a meal with meat and wine in the middle of the 9 days? Don't we realize how far away we are from Hashem? And he would start singing Al Naharos Bavel, and he couldn't finish because the tears were just choking on him and falling into his becher, into his cup. Tomorrow night is Tisha B'Av. We're in Tzfas, but we're also in Golus because we don't have the Beis HaMikdash. Hashem is telling us to clean ourselves off, and Hashem is also cleaning us off. Hashem is washing off the dirt, the smelly dirt. Hashem is bringing to us a portable mikveh to make us, to wake us up and to make our eyes have light and to shine and to feel close to Him. Those of you who heard my son will remember that he mentioned that Shabbos Chazon was a time to have a sneak preview of the Beis HaMikdash. We need to open up our eyes and put light into our eyes and recognize that Emir Hashem, when we go into Tisha B'Av, we have the ability to see and to feel the Beis HaMikdash. And when He heals us, and when He pours the water on us, and when He cleans us off, then we'll be able to return to our Father's home in Yerushalayim. May you all have a very, very, very deep and meaningful Tisha B'Av, and do the right thing to bring yourself as close to Hashem as you can, and know that Hashem is calling you and wants you to be close to Him and loves you so very much. And I love you all very much too.
Shkar.